Kalin, I hesitate to discuss this, but we need to address it. Reading this book, The Brothers Karamazov, has helped me develop some thoughts on good and evil. This story is one of the most troubling I've encountered, so it won't be easy to talk about. Still, I appreciate your help as I try to understand it. What if I told you that one of literature's most haunting stories centers on a child, a thrown stone, and a nobleman's twisted sense of justice? This tale from Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov challenges everything we think we know about faith, morality, and human nature.
The way this story unfolds, Pappy, is absolutely devastating. And what makes it even more powerful is how it serves as this perfect philosophical argument about good and evil, about divine justice and human cruelty.
You know what's entering, Kalin? In 19th century Russia, nobles had almost unlimited power over their serfs. We're talking about 23 million people who were essentially property. This story takes that historical reality and transforms it into this searing indictment of both human and divine justice.
That context really amplifies the horror. The way this nobleman turns a child's simple accident into a calculated display of power.
Vista High Kalin. And here's what makes this story so powerful. It starts with something so small. A young boy throws a stone and accidentally hits the paw of the nobleman's hunting dog. It's the kind of mistake any child could make. But what follows, well, that's where Ivan's philosophical argument really takes shape.
The disproportion between the offense and the punishment is staggering, Pappy. How does Ivan use this specific incident to build his larger argument?
Well, he presents it as part of what scholars call his rebellion against God. You see, Ivan collects these stories of children's suffering. He has dozens of them, but this one, this story of the boy and the dogs, becomes his ultimate evidence. He's saying, look at this, really look at this. How can any future harmony justify this kind of suffering?
The focus on children's suffering seems particularly strategic in making his point about divine justice.
Oh, absolutely. And here's why. In Christian theology, which was dominant in 19th century Russia, there's this concept of suffering as potentially redemptive. But Ivan's saying, how can you apply that to children? They haven't had time to sin, to make moral choices. Their suffering can't be justified as punishment or as some spiritual lesson.
That's such a powerful challenge to traditional theodicy. The attempt to justify God's goodness in the face of evil and suffering.
And you know what makes this even more complex? The nobleman in this story isn't some supernatural force of evil. He's just a human being with too much power. Studies of historical records from that era show that while such extreme cases were rare, nobles did have the legal right to punish their serfs however they saw fit.
So it's really an indictment of human nature as much as it is of divine justice.
Precisely. And here's where it gets fascinating. Ivan tells this story to his brother Alyosha, who's deeply religious. It's like a philosophical bomb designed to shake the foundations of faith. But what's fascinating is how Alyosha responds.
How does he maintain his faith in the face of such a devastating challenge?
That's the thing. He doesn't try to explain it away or justify it. Instead, he acknowledges the horror, but still chooses to believe. It's what philosophers call the leap of faith, accepting that some things can't be rationally explained, but believing anyway.
The way this story resonates with modern readers is remarkable. We might not have Russian nobles anymore, but the questions it raises about power, justice, and suffering are still incredibly relevant.
Recent studies in moral psychology have shown that people across cultures tend to judge harm to children as particularly morally wrong. It's like Dostoevsky tapped into something universal here. This story hits us at both an emotional and intellectual level.
The way he structures the narrative is brilliant too, building from this simple incident to this profound philosophical challenge.
And here's what I find most striking: the story works on so many levels. It's a historical document about Russian serfdom, a philosophical argument about divine justice, a psychological study of power and cruelty, and ultimately a profoundly human story about suffering and faith.
That multi layered nature really shows why this story has endured for over 140 years.
Looking at it from our modern perspective, I think this story asks us some really uncomfortable questions about our own world. When we see suffering today, especially the suffering of children, how do we respond? Do we turn away, try to justify it, or do we, like Ivan, use it as a reason to challenge the systems that allow such suffering?
Those questions feel particularly relevant in our current global context, don't they?
They really do. And maybe that's the ultimate power of this story. It forces us to confront these questions we might prefer to avoid. It's not just about 19th century Russia or theological debates, it's about fundamental human questions that we're still wrestling with today.
That's what makes great literature timeless. Pappy, its ability to speak to universal human experiences and challenges.
And in the end, Kalin, beyond all the philosophy and theology, we're left with this stark human moment: a child, a stone, and an act of cruelty that challenges everything we want to believe about humanity and justice. Sometimes the simplest stories carry the most profound truths.